Well, everyone, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you for the introduction. My name's George Hunt. I'm the Director of International Development at Teesside University. Firstly, I don't always sound like this, so apologies. I've been a little ill the last few days, but not C19, so that's a bit of a novelty really in the current time. Really, I was very excited about the fact that we were going to be running this session today alongside BritCham, because the relationship between technology and money is one of the main areas of innovation within the world, and I think really shows how far the world has come in terms of its development. Indeed, access to money has always been one of the key things that people needed to innovate in order to do. My dad will tell me stories about his youth in the 1960s, where he used to forge his grandmother's signature in order to get access to her pension. Things that are totally unthinkable now, where we have different passwords, multi-factor authentication, and a whole range of things surrounding the ways that we interact with and the ways that we use our money. And I think the developments in this area are obviously really important, and a university like ours wants to be at the forefront of those developments as much as we can. Looking at global economies, and I know that we have people joining us today from within the FinTech sector and from outside of the sector as well, then FinTech is a great way that new markets can emerge around the world, because there are no restrictions on where technologies can be developed, where things can be implemented from. So a university like ours is very well placed to help students get the right skills and experience in order to make their ideas into reality, and to then take those to wherever they want to be in the world and make them into a success. Now, a university like Teesside has had some recent successes and some real good news around its own innovations. Firstly, Teesside as an area was a big winner in the latest budget. So we're seeing new treasury jobs moving to the area. We also will have a free port in Teesside as well. So an area where we can export from the UK without the normal tariffs and with different rules. Now, indeed, the financial sector is one of the main areas that the British government are looking at post-Brexit. You may have seen in the news as well that a digital pound has been mooted as something that the government may look at as part of its developments post-Brexit in terms of engaging with the rest of the world. And the financial sector is obviously an area where the UK wants to continue to perform well in the future. So choosing to do a financial qualification through a UK university is a very smart decision at this time. From the university's point of view, we have a very strong record of delivering academic programs, but with real world experience as well. And you'll be hearing from our colleagues today about exactly that, the advanced practice model, where we have academic modules situated alongside a project or a placement, which will help students make the most of their time at the university and obviously go on to do interesting things when they graduate. As a university as a whole, we've been welcoming students from all over the world since our inception. We have at the moment around 1,500 students on a form of advanced practice course where they're studying modules in the classroom, or indeed, as it's been for the last 12 months, a mixture of classroom and online, and also undertaking either projects or placements relevant to their particular area. The FinTech program is a new one, but it comes from our outstanding School of Computing, Engineering and Digital Technologies, where our staff are highly experienced in this area and ready to help students make the leap into whatever the future holds for us. That's all from me in terms of an introduction about the university. I know you're very much looking forward to hearing more from colleagues on the session about what is in store for us in terms of bridging the gap in the financial sector. There will be the opportunity for questions from me or from other colleagues throughout the session. So we look very much forward to hearing from you. And I'll hand over to Steven, who's going to be the moderator for today's session. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Mr. George. Now I'm going to hand the screen to our moderator, Mr. Steven Marcelino. Steven Marcelino is the chairman of Global Indonesia Professional Association, or GIPA, and the ASEAN Capital Market Lead at Accenture UK. So without any further ado, please enjoy the session, and over to you, Mr. Steven.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks, George. Welcome everyone again to today's webinar organized by BritCham Indonesia in partnership with Teesside University. I think the aim of this webinar is really to provide everyone with better insights for those who really wish to have and start building fundamental knowledge on FinTech industry and explore the potential change on your own career to FinTech related areas. In this webinar, we we'll be really discussing a number of key topics around what is really FinTech and some of the trends we're seeing, both in Indonesia and perhaps in the region, Southeast Asia. What's happening in FinTech and in financial services industry? There are so many players in the ecosystem. Are they competing or are they partnering? And in terms of the gap that this webinar is trying to really look at is really a bit of the industry knowledge where the webinar aiming to bridging the gap, as well as potential human capital, labor skills, trends in this webinar. And I just want to kind of share a number of really great stats around FinTech. Global FinTech industry is projected to reach 350 billion valuation by 2022. That number is a significant number because it will increase not only for the past sort of decade, but with an average growth of 25% per annum, meaning that it is really with a fast growth sort of industry where perhaps some of you really want to get your foot in the game much earlier on, really driven by emerging markets like Indonesia and Asia. 70% of the combined valuation came from about 70 FinTech unicorns, and some of them are UK headquartered, some of them are also headquartered in are all across Asia. Indonesia, we have OVO as our FinTech sort of unicorn. So we're very delighted to be talking about this very important topic. And without further ado, I thought it would be good now for me to introduce two fantastic speakers that we have lined up, Kate and Hermawan. So let me introduce our panelists. So Kate Baucherel, a business development and strategy consultant specializing in emerging tech, particularly in blockchain and distributed ledger technology, and an associate lecturer at Teesside University. She has held senior technical and financial roles in businesses of all sizes across multiple sectors, leading several enterprises through their startup and growth phases. She delivers keynotes on the effective use of emerging technologies in business and is author of several books, mostly on blockchain. Without further ado, Kate, do you mind sharing a little bit about, to our audience here about FinTech, its trends, and a little bit more around some of the skills they need to really get into this industry? Over to you, Kate.
I would be delighted to share that, Stephen. I will share my screen as well. Good. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Kate Baucherel, and I'm an associate lecturer with Teesside University, as well as all the other things that I do, in both the business school and the School of Computing, because of my background in tech and finance. I'm actually a chartered management accountant, but I've always worked in tech as well as in finance. And the last 10 years, I've been working exclusively with emerging technologies, blockchain, and new markets. So I've come to talk to you today about FinTech, about financial technology. This is an extraordinarily exciting area. It's possibly one of the most rapidly growing markets in the world, as Stephen said. And there are real opportunities for people to forge really great careers in FinTech. And this is what at University of Teesside we want to support. It's important to bring people quickly into such a fast growing market, which is why the model of an MSc and an applied practice MSc is so important for the growth of this market and for the improvement of the pool of human capital that is going to help to grow this. So what is FinTech? Well, we use that word to describe new technology, innovation in the market, and efficiency in financial services. It's something that improves systems and services for consumers and for business. So that's the financial side. On the tech side, it really covers any company that uses the internet, mobile devices, smartphones, and so on, and software to provide that financial assistance. And it really is one of the fastest growing sectors in technology generally. And it really has disrupted the traditional banking systems and insurance and treasury models around the world, regardless of how they originally developed. So a little tour globally to begin with. The US has seen some very heavy investment in fintech over the last decade, particularly in personal finance, online trading, payment systems. However, the US is an interesting case because there is a real patchwork of regulation, of legal systems around the country. And so there is not the overarching banking regulation, financial services regulation that is common to the whole country. So we have a real patchwork of different solutions coming through to fill the niches that had a real demand for innovation. And we get some really high profile and high value companies coming out of the US fintech innovation and Silicon Valley. You may have heard of Stripe, Coinbase, eToro, Klarna. All of these have had high valuations. Some have gone to market, are in the process of going public. So very, very high growth, and a really good example of how fintech looks at the real niche ideas, whether that is an easy checkout for businesses to take card payments, or trading platforms to bring people into the investment world. So what about the UK? We've been doing an awful lot of things since 2012. We're very well placed at Teesside because we have challenger banks on our doorstep. Our Financial Conduct Authority, so the regulatory body that governs all the financial services in England, established what they call a sandbox in 2012 to allow people to come and try out new ideas and new ways of helping people and businesses get what they needed out of banking. And if you think about it, our banking systems have developed over hundreds of years, and they're not really ready for all of the changes that have come so quickly in the last 2 or 3 decades. Even the arrival of the World Wide Web and then the development of smartphones and our confidence in using mobile devices has placed huge pressure on the older systems, because we now expect to have all of our banking services with us as we move around. So a lot of banks were struggling to change their traditional systems into something more agile and innovative and useful. So when the companies began to experiment, we really did it in style. In 2019, we had 59 new financial services companies, what we call challenger banks. Although they are not banks, they are challengers to banking services. And at that time, those were valued each over around over $1 billion. And at that time, that was half the value of the global industry. If you see the speed, as Steven said, that has accelerated. And so we are now sitting at around about 3 times that value globally. You start to see why there is a real need for people to get involved in this sector to assist its growth. So how are things looking in Southeast Asia? There is so much happening. Indonesia has over 300 fintech businesses. Linkasia, Pasarpolis are 2 particularly high profile ones that we hear about around the world. And the growth in the last 3 years has been just extraordinary. In Malaysia, in April 2019 alone, there were close to 200 startups in insurtech, in payments, in blockchain, in lending. We've seen considerable development in Singapore, where the financial sector is an integral part of the ambition to be a smart nation. And the Monetary Authority of Singapore has created a smart financial centre through fintech and innovation investment, doing very like what the UK did in starting a sandbox to try things out and make sure things work well and fit with regulations and protect customers. And in Vietnam, in the 3 years between 2017 and 2020, the number of fintech startups tripled, and there are, I think, 39 licensed payment services, non-bank payment services in Vietnam. So what do we have? We have MorePay, ZoloPay, Mocha as well. So all of these are licensed financial technology companies. They are regulated, they are safeguarding their customers, and they are picking up a lot of the things that traditional banks don't do. Perhaps effective mobile banking, or a lot of accounts in different currencies, and making things easier for people to get bank accounts and to access services. So are these challenger banks in competition with traditional banking? Are they going to sweep the existing systems away, or are they in collaboration? It's really a mixture of the two. There is a lot of competition in very niche areas. We see things like mobile first banking taking a huge leap. We have companies like Revolut, Zumo, Wise, and I know Revolut and Wise have expanded considerably internationally from their original base. They have independent success as banks, as regulated banks, and they are expanding internationally and moving very quickly, moving more quickly than older institutions. But they're still taking advantage of the same regulations and the same customer safeguarding to give consumers real confidence. We're seeing a lot of work around cryptocurrencies, digital currencies, whether that's fully decentralized, money of the people, original crypto, or central bank digital currencies. The first of those worldwide, I believe, is the Bahamian Sand Dollar, which is now live and running. And we have obviously work going on in the Bank of England. We have work on the digital euro, we're hearing about digital dollar, and we have the work that is going on in China with the digital yuan. So we have a whole new landscape of digital money to deal with as well. And the challenger banks are in a great position to take advantage of this new, these new things that are coming through, and to enable consumers and businesses to take advantage of them. And decentralized finance, I'm not even going to talk in detail about that, but this is what is coming through with cryptocurrency and with blockchain, actually bringing some financial services to a peer-to-peer position where there is no bank intermediary at all. But what of collaboration? Actually, this is really the core of what we see the future to be. Banks are encouraging that fintech innovation because they recognize that this agile development and these niche services can benefit them, can benefit their business models and their customers. So we have accelerator programs that have been running for several years through things like Barclays and Citibank and Nordea, for instance. And a lot of companies have invested directly into fintech innovators. Morgan Stanley, Wells Fargo and Bank of America are three that have really gone into investing in the new companies that are coming through. There are partnerships evolving all of the time, and acquisitions where traditional finance, insurance and banking can see an innovation that will help their customers and their business. And we're seeing a lot of in-house development as well. One particularly interesting one in the last few months has been JP Morgan doing a lot of work around cash management for Treasury. And they have developed now a working blockchain to create intraday liquidity in the repo market. So intraday settlement of repo balances. So we have competition, which is putting the traditional banking sector on its mettle, and we have collaboration to bring all of these new services through for customers, consumers and businesses around the world. But that gives us a problem. It is a very rapidly growing industry. It's very well respected. It is well regulated, but it needs staff. It needs that human capital. This is a really good demonstration of what the issue is. In 2017, the UK FinTech census noted that nearly 60% of respondents were struggling with coding and software skills and the talent that they needed to build their businesses. And that was only 5 years after our sandbox started. 2 years later, it hadn't changed much. They were still struggling to get the digital skills. There is an enormous skills gap developing with a rapidly growing industry and not enough people who are able to enter the industry and contribute to it. So with the MSc in Financial Technology at Teesside University, we are looking to bring people into the sector and to use their existing skills and to build upon those to give them what they need to succeed in this incredible high growth area. FinTech companies need people to understand the market needs, to understand those niches, to innovate, to come up with ideas, to manage data, which is an extraordinary task, because we have, I think the statistics are that in the last 2 years, half of the data we have today was created. And next year that will be true, and the year after, because the amount of data we hold is growing exponentially. We need people to design apps that are easy for people to use so that we are not excluding any of our society. And obviously developers to maintain the software, to manage compliance and regulation, and so on. So we are building skills for FinTech success. We look for software engineering and software development, of course, but we also need artists and designers and cybersecurity practitioners and data scientists and data managers and analysts and finance and law professionals and really innovators and explorers who can be excited about this new sector and to build their career. It is very much something that people can enter from any original discipline and can bring those original skills into the new into their new career. And just to leave you with an idea of what the kind of thing that we're dealing with in FinTech, we're dealing with big data analysis to reduce risk and to improve services for people who may not have been able to access it before. We're looking at machine learning from that data to build artificial intelligence that will assist decision making, help to reduce human error, and again to improve the service for consumers. We're looking at process automation, whether that's within the processes of a bank, or whether it is externally in a decentralized environment using blockchain and cryptocurrency. And we're looking at mobile first financial tools increasingly around the world. So there are a lot of exciting avenues in FinTech, and we need people to join this future. It is a global growing industry which needs human capital. And these finance, insurance, payments, asset management and traditional banking systems need the resources and the knowledge to remain competitive. And I do hope that you'll be able to join this exciting sector with the support from Teesside. Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks, Kate. That was a brilliant perspective around macro, what's happening at the macro level for the industry. And I think hopefully that really inspire a lot of the attendees on really getting to know a little bit about FinTech industry, what's really happening in the industry. And there is certainly a growing demand to really to fill in some of the talents so that some of these FinTech can not only expand, but also enter new markets and really get into this exciting journey with the industry. Now, I'm also delighted to have a practitioner, someone from the incumbent financial services who has certainly been dealing with a lot of FinTech, a lot of technology innovation in industry. We will hear from one more panelist before we open up for Q&A. I'd encourage you to put your questions on the Q&A box. Thanks from Daphne, who has put some questions. We'll try to answer and try to cover some of these questions. Coming up next, I believe we have Hermawan. Just to double check, Hermawan, are you here with us?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi.
Perfect. All right. So let me introduce Hermawan to everyone very briefly. So Hermawan Tjakradiwiria, or we call it Hermawan, is the country head of Standard Chartered Bank Indonesia for Nexus. So Hermawan joined Standard Chartered as country head Nexus Banking since July last year. Prior to joining for Standard Chartered, Hermawan was the digital banking development head at Bank Danamon with responsibility for digital product strategy and bank-wide digital strategy. Hermawan, who brings with him over 17 years of working experience, having held leadership and strategic roles in the digital bank, e-commerce space at various multinational companies, completed a business and IT management program at Jönköping International Business School in Sweden. Now, over to you, Hermawan. It would be really great to hear from you on some of the latest Indonesia fintech landscape happening in Indonesia, and what sort of things banks like Standard Chartered Bank that has quite a well-established presence in Indonesia do with the latest innovations happening in the country, so that it really gave some flavor to the audience on, you know, what sort of things that they should really anticipate from the perspective of the incumbent. Over to you.
All right. Okay. So thank you, Stephen. I think we just had a really productive and very interesting session from Kate over there just before. So I'm going to explain a little bit about, first of all, of course, to understand a bit about the market, the fintech market in Indonesia. What's the landscape, right? So just a bit of one pager here about Standard Chartered. So we are one of the few global, truly global banks still around in existence here. We've been around for more than 150 years. In Indonesia alone, we've been around for almost 158 years, I think. We were present in over 60 different markets. We have almost 30 countries with retail licenses. And yeah, we're pretty much present here in the regions also quite strong. So give a bit background on the fintech landscape. So the fintech industry, so the e-commerce, you know, the ride-hailing business, the online travels, it has been booming like we've never seen before, right? So I mean, back in 2015, e-commerce was still in essence very early in the of the industries. It was the GMV at that time was only probably 1.7 billion US. And it has risen to 21 billion in 2019, and that's almost like showing an 88% growth. And there's a potential to grow all the way up to 82 billion US dollars in terms of GMV in the next 2025. That actually, Indonesia is the biggest e-commerce market in Southeast Asia. It's also the biggest market for ride-hailing and also the online media, just because of the sheer population size and how the e-commerce and the fintech industries are just growing very rapidly. So whatever you see in the data, in most of informations about Indonesia, it's very interesting to see how out of the entire populations, they are of the population of 270 plus million, almost 80 to 90 million of people, adult working age people, actually don't have a bank account yet. So they represents about like 48 or about 60% of these working people. They're not fully banked yet. So they are either underserved or unbanked. So there is for the banks itself, there's still a lot of opportunity to grow the size to serve the market, and which can be seen with how some of the Indonesian banks are actually one of the biggest in the region and also some of the most valuable in the world, just because let's say some of the banks can have like 60 million customers within the market. And Indonesia also have a very high internet penetration right now, and it has been growing very fast, very rapidly. And the e-commerce adoptions is also growing very rapidly. Just in 2019, it was already 88%. So we combine all of this with the high number of people who are still unbanked, the rapidly growing digital penetrations, the rapidly growing smartphone penetrations. It is actually just a matter of time where the growth of digital economy in Indonesia will just explode in the next couple of years. Some of the things that people buy most of the time online is actually just a very simple stuff like fashion and fashion products, or like clothing, or electronics, food, and travel. And I think before COVID, travel industries, if some of the big unicorn here in Indonesia is actually for example, like given a name like Traveloka is actually the biggest OTA or the online travel agencies right now. They grow very fast, and they've been growing rapidly around the region also. And some of the e-commerce names here in Indonesia, like the Tokopedia, like Gojek, even the food delivery industry has been growing very rapidly. So, although because of that, because of the low penetrations of the banking product, bank transfer and cash on delivery, to be honest, is actually one of the highest preferred payment method that is currently being used. Maybe in terms of value, in terms of GMV, maybe credit card still holds it, but that's because people usually tend to buy higher ticket size item, and then they can convert it into installment. In terms of lending product, that's why credit card still holds a quite prominent positions right now in terms of transaction. However, only 4% out of the total banking banking customers actually have a credit card. So 96% actually don't have a credit card. So credit card penetration is still one of the lowest right now in the country right now. The fintech landscape in Indonesia has been very interesting. As you can see here on the right side, the lending actually dominates, followed closely by payments. So in terms of, if you can see here on the table, payment companies like GoPay, OVO, Shopee, actually, and Dana, Genius is a bank, and Linkaja, they've been dominating the market. There are a lot of payment companies right now existing in the market. But lending is where it's interesting. So the number of license, the ones that got licensed from OJK, is only about 33 companies here. But the ones that are not still under registration is probably around 130 companies right now. So these 130 companies, they're in the process of trying to get licensed by the OJK. However, they are still allowed to be operating and allowed to offer their product and services, but they will have to report regularly to OJK. So the growth of the lending, the fintech, the P2P, the crowdfunding business has been growing very rapidly for the last 2 or 3 years. And blockchains is also coming up. There's a lot of companies, blockchain exchange, like crypto exchange companies have been showing up also. Investments have been, for last year, especially during the pandemic, blockchain investments have been growing because people are starting to, when they cannot go outside, they would actually prefer to invest from their home. They try to, log in to their mobiles, to their laptop, looking for other ways to invest their money. So such the likes of Bibit, Stockbit, Ajaib have been on the news for the past couple of years. Especially, they've been drawing a lot of investment funding. For example, Ajaib, they just recently raised about like 90 million US, the biggest Series A funding in Southeast Asia. So that just shows how investors are very bullish in the market right now. And some of all of these fintech types or innovation companies that are actually being regulated or being monitored closely by the regulators, by the financial service authorities or OJK. And also they can actually apply for sandbox at the Bank Indonesia or the central banks. So it depends on the type of their products. If they are focusing on payments or transactional activities, then they will be directed to go to the central bank, because the central banks are the one managing all of the transactional kind of services. If you offer lending, if you offer investment, if you offer different type of funding or lending product, then you'll be directed to go to OJK to get licenses over there. And also, if you offer services that supports these financial services, like if you do eKYC, if you provide different type of verification, digital signatures, then you can actually apply for a sandbox license at the OJK. So as I mentioned before, the fintech is actually most of the fintechs here addressing a very big market size of the 64 million MSME, the micro SMEs. 64 million are still underbanked or underserved back in 2018, and from 2019, the growth of the lending has been growing exponentially. So back in early 2019, probably only 20 billion rupiah that was disbursed in a month, and now it grows all the way to 160 billion. So especially during the pandemic, there's been a lot of demand from the small SME sites. But then, because the pandemic, of course, there's a lot of also restrictions. There is also a lot of controls that are being placed, not just by the banks, but also even by the fintech. So I think the fintechs are playing a bit more on the high risk side, so they really have to be a bit more careful in terms of managing managing to underwrite their customers. One of the biggest difference, of course, the biggest benefit how fintech compared to banks is how fintechs are able to leverage a very unique and very creative different sort of tools, either to underwrite, to fraud detect, or even to do collections, which this type of tools, this type of methodology that the fintechs usually use are so different or very effective compared to the banks, because banks usually, if they have to serve a certain segment of customers, they usually either do it very expensive, very ineffective, and it takes a lot of manpower to do them. So in the end, most banks usually just go after the top segment, people who have very good cash flow, people who have very good credit rating already, but then they actually leave most of the biggest chunk of the market, which is the ones that are still growing, they are still beginning in the business. So that's where fintechs are able to serve this kind of segment. So the governments actually, from my personal experience, they have been moving quite fast in terms of regulating and providing the support of the growth of the fintechs. Back in 2018, where BI have initiated launching a lot of e-money or e-wallet server-based licenses to multiple companies. It has just been growing like really, really fast from there. And just from 2019 and even from last year, BI have been focusing a lot on the launching of the new QR standard, so the QRIS. So this QRIS also becomes a really big game changer, because previously all of these e-money providers, e-wallet, or even banks, when they launch their own QR payment, usually you can only pay OVO QR with your OVO account. You can only pay GoPay QR with your GoPay account. Now with the standardized QR, you can actually pay cross between e-money, between banks, so you don't actually have to worry. So yeah, I can pay with OVO QR with my own bank's account QR with GoPay. So there's that cross that has been made possible with the standardized regulations from BI, along with the support of the industries and the switching industries that process those transactions. And the banks also being driven actually to support the BI, the Bank Indonesia payment system vision for the 2025, where it is predicted where digital wallet, the usage will grow from 10% to 20% of the population of the overall transactions, and where the the GTV, the gross transaction values, will grow from 1.5 billion to 25 billion. So there's a multiple jumps in terms of the usage of digital wallet. But not just wallet, not just e-commerce, the banks itself also seeing a very massive transaction growth during the past year, during the pandemic, where most people have started to shift from internet banking or from going to the bank using ATM. Now most of them actually starting to download their mobile banking. They're starting to use digital banking product, and that has been shown a lot in most of the banks, where they see growth of 30% yearly growth just during the pandemic alone, and that has shown that the pandemic has drive this digital adoption much earlier than previously possible. So another area that the banks are looking to work is with how they utilize the different type of technologies, right? That's where we look at banking. That's where Standard Chartered look at banking as a service as a way where we can actually penetrate or serve the Indonesian market better than before. So I'm going to play one video about just showing about Nexus. Let me know if you can hear this.
Nexus is a plugin
Yes, we can hear. Okay.
that allows platform players to offer financial services to their customers within their ecosystems seamlessly. Partners can integrate banking solutions into existing platforms to build hyper ecosystems or super apps. Customers don't want a separate app to access banking features. They want it all in one place. We make that happen.
Yeah.
Pak Mawan, just a courtesy reminder, if you could wrap up, please.
Yeah, sure. So Nexus itself is actually started as an internal startup within the bank. So we are part of the SC Ventures. So it's a corporate venture capital in Standard Chartered. So our idea is to democratize banking products to the masses by leveraging our partners' brand. So imagine having the likes of Google, Facebook, or any social media companies or e-commerce companies. They can actually sell banking products. You can create an account, you can get lending from them, all powered by Standard Chartered. So this model is going to be very revolutionary within the market, where we partner up with our partners, where we allow them to turn them into quote unquote a bank. So just like what you see in the likes of Apple Card, where behind it is actually Goldman Sachs, and there's a Google Pay, and there's even T-Money, T-Mobile, where they started to build their own bank in the back. So we actually try to do that, but on a larger scale here in Indonesia. And just recently, we have announced that we're partnering with one of the leading e-commerce companies here, Bukalapak. And Sociola. So those two partners are the first one that we will be enabling them to provide financial services to their customers, powered by Standard Chartered. So this is how we think that we can drive financial inclusions through our partners' ecosystems and with the help of the ecosystem or the partnerships business model. So we don't go at the customers alone. All right, I think that's all from us.
Thanks, Pak Mawan. That was a wonderful and comprehensive presentation on Indonesia fintech landscape, and congratulations for the recent collab with Bukalapak. And I'm sure you will do more sort of partnership between other technology players in Indonesia. Probably let me just open up the Q&A. We have started to receive a number of questions. I would encourage everyone to really put and submit your questions to the Q&A box if you haven't done it so. But let me just take the first questions, if that's okay. And I'm keen to sort of break the Q&A into industry, so what's happening in the partnership and competition model, and the third around human capital, if I may. So the first one on the industry, can perhaps to go to you first, Kate, around what sort of services you've seen fintech firms in the past that may offer to sort of listed companies. I think that's what Daphne mentioned by stock companies. So some either blue chip sort of incumbents or as well as other listed companies. What's your thoughts, Kate?
I have seen things from the retail side, so the emergence of trading platforms such as eToro and others, which is opening up the idea of stock investment as an attractive and safe thing for consumers to do. So that is a retail side rather than an internal side of things. Internally, I believe that the emerging technologies that we're seeing coming through now, particularly robotic process automation and blockchain, will enable processes to be streamlined and to be disintermediated, which will help the functioning of stock markets and investment. That's a short answer because I know we don't have a lot of time.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. And I think one of perhaps the use case that Kate mentioned there, I'm keen to highlight, is trade finance. And I've seen that in some of the clients we've seen in Accenture, how trade finance that in the past have relied in a lot of the paper and manual processes, can really be disrupted with FinTech and some of the blockchain and distributed ledger solutions. Because, when we think about trade finance, it's really the end users of the trade finance are companies that would like to export or import. It could be from UK, it could be from Indonesia, and the banks that can play a role. And perhaps, I don't know how close you are with some of the trade finance at Standard Chartered Bank, and obviously Standard Chartered Bank is known to be really not only a global bank but also a trade finance-based bank. What sort of observation you've seen in some of the innovation that FinTech can play a role here to support corporates and listed kind of companies, sort of client base in the CIB or CCIB space in SEB?
Yeah, well, obviously, the thing is, it's not just that, the bank, even SC Ventures itself, we've been partnering with different FinTechs. We've been partnering with payments companies. We've been partnering with payment processing companies, remittance companies. We can also look at ourselves. We partner with FinTechs that can provide AI or machine learning to do better underwriting. Well, I'm looking at FinTechs that can provide better ways for us to do collections, digital collections. So those type of FinTechs, obviously, throughout the whole value chain, throughout the whole process of providing, procuring, and delivering services like funding, onboarding customers, doing the KYCs, doing the facial recognitions. We're seeing a lot of FinTechs that provide this type of services that gives a value to the entire of the customer's experience. So there's a lot of areas that the FinTechs are offering to us.
Sure, thanks, Pak Aman. I think that's really great. And if I could move on to another interesting questions on the industries around cybersecurity. I think Ephraim Santos is asking around the importance of digital security, especially for the companies who are new in the FinTech industry that may not necessarily allocate substantial amount in the company's budget. It's perhaps in essence the importance of cybersecurity, perhaps not only in the FinTech, but also in the financial services industry. Because again, right, cyber can happen in cross industries, but in the industry that places trust at the heart of customers, the only way people want to use some sort of FinTech solution is the customer trust. And obviously cyber security or cyber sort of threat is a major threat. Obviously Indonesia has regulations on this, Europe and the UK has quite a draconian rules around cybersecurity for the right reasons. Keen to hear, your thoughts, Kate, around, how FinTech industry or FinTech players responding to ever-growing cybersecurity threats. Okay.
Oh, this is a subject close to my heart. I actually write cybersecurity thrillers, and the finance sector gives me so much material. It is absolutely true. Ephraim's question is very much that it is the FinTech industry and the startups, these innovators who don't allocate enough budget to cybersecurity. In teaching, cybersecurity permeates through everything that you do in computing. So so those skills are not lacking. But it's absolutely true. I mean, we have seen examples, there's interesting things going on in blockchain, where if you have a smart contract which is deployed on blockchain, it can't be changed. And if you get something wrong, then there is an issue. And there are hacks going on, and they're becoming more and more high profile because people are not auditing the smart contracts. I mean, there are companies that do that, and they are run off their feet. So there is, I think that the skills are there. We're training people with the skills. There is more and more awareness among consumers, particularly, that there is potentially an issue with cybersecurity, and wherever something is found to be wanting, it is publicized. And I think that the driver for innovative companies to really allocate enough budget to cybersecurity will be that consumers will vote with their feet and go to someone that they know has dealt with cybersecurity and designed it into their product from day one.
Thanks, Kay. I think it's good. And perhaps, Hermawan, conscious of time, if I can move on to the second part of the Q&A around sort of industry-wide partnership. What do you think is the hottest sort of fintech you're looking at the moment? And how should Indonesian banks or other multinational banks with presence in Indonesia should really be looking into some of these fintechs?
Well, obviously the hottest ones are the lending ones, the peer-to-peer. They have been growing very rapidly, very massively for past, I think just the last 2 years. There have been hundreds of companies have popped up, and they've been receiving a lot of fundings. And there's also been a lot of news where there's a lot of illegal fintech, so to quote. So they say they're called illegal fintech because they are illegal peer-to-peer lending because they operate without license from the OJK, from the regulator government body, and they do shady business. So they basically like online loan shark. So these are the ones that actually put up the bad name in terms of the financial service industries, because they are a loan shark, and unfortunately most of them came from abroad, and they come here just based on trying to look for data, steal the data of the customers, and try to do shady business. And that of course the governments, I think they're trying very hard to regulate this, and it requires a lot of course, persistence, even for the banks. Now, banks actually starting to work together with these peer-to-peer companies, because whether banks like it or not, but actually sometimes they do better work than the banks in terms of serving these customers, serving the underbanked. So usually banks can either work together by channeling their loans through the fintechs, through the peer-to-peer business, or they can even give loans directly to the peer-to-peer business for them to do to provide to their customers. And that has been, I think it's growing. I think a lot of banks are starting to look into this now.
Sure. Thanks, Hermawan. And if I can stay with you first, and I'm keen to talk a little bit more on the human capital and the talents or fintech talents in Indonesia. Based on your conversation with some fintech and some tech firms in Indonesia, what are really the roles where they are struggling to fill in, meaning that they just cannot find the right people to fill in the jobs? Because we got a few questions came in, when people register around, I want to work in the fintech field, how do I become XYZ, how do I find out if I can work in fintech and things like that. So it seems there is a genuine appetite for those people who are really work in the industry. But keen to hear your thoughts on the ground. What sort of roles right now is it much needed?
Well, fintech, it's combinations of financial business, of course, at its heart, but then there's technology part, right? So this technology is just the same as any like startup business or digital company business, right? So I think there's a lot of demand right now in the market in terms of on the technology side. And there's skillful technologies, things, skillful workers actually still is very sought after, and is still being I think with the way how the education, the curriculums is being designed and provided by most of the educational institution here in the country, I think there's still not enough qualified workers within the technology industry that can, that are up to par with what the industry is looking for. I think that is a really big issue where, sometimes companies would actually look for resources from abroad and to bring in just because of this, they cannot find the right people here. But in terms of fintech itself, I think it's just financial business. It's something that once you learn about business administrations, once you learn about financials, you get to learn about it. Even myself, I come from a technical background and I jump into the banking side. So there's always a way to learn.
So it's really emphasis on some of the tech, data, and some of those relevant skills, right? And if I can turn to Kate, for those of those of an audience based in Southeast Asia, what do you think is that will make a case for them to learn some of the technology skills and understanding from a UK reputable university like Teesside University, right? And what sort of, how does that experience will enable them to really connect with some of the fintech, it could be UK fintechs or global fintechs out there. Over to you, Kate.
Yeah, I mean, the skills required are global. The skills required are very varied. I mean, I was just looking at the adverts for one of our local fintechs around Teesside, Atom Bank from County Durham, and just there is a huge range of underlying skills that are required by fintech companies. So they are advertising for portfolio managers and data analysts and engineers and site reliability and customer services. But all of the people who are coming into that business need some understanding of what they're trying to achieve. And by learning the technical background and the detail that goes into a fintech startup as opposed to any other sector, then you can overlay that knowledge onto the skills and the interests that you already have to be able to apply to a fintech company anywhere in the world.
Thanks, Kate. And I think with that sort of brilliant sort of answer, that's kind of wrap up our webinar. Hope everyone find today's discussion useful to really give everyone an understanding of the industry, what's really happening, what's the latest landscape and trends, and why this emerging remarkable growth in the fintech industry need to be complemented by the right sort of people that can join or maybe start your own fintech, so that there is really a gap that can bridge from talent perspective. Perhaps I'll now move on to close the webinar to thank Bridgecham and Chenny and Elia and the whole Bridgecham team who have really made today's possible, as well as with Kate, George from Teesside University, and also Hermawan from Standard Chartered Bank, Nexus, powered by SE Ventures. And really hopefully you find this useful. Please send through your feedback. My understanding, the PowerPoint would be distributed by the organizer to the audience. Is that right, Jenny?
Yes, but the presentation and recording will be shared after the session, probably next week.
After the session. And I know we have a number of questions that are remain unanswered, and I'm probably going to defer Jenny to hopefully trying to cover some of these questions. But again, thank you very much for your participation, and wishing everyone a very lovely weekend. Thank you again, Kate. Thank you, Hermawan. Let's stay connected.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Nice weekend.